It's a Monday.
It is such a Monday today.
Gosh.
One of those days.
Like the weather here sucks. It was beautiful all weekend. And then as soon as Monday hits, it's just like gray and cold.
That
again.
happened here too. You know, I was fine. I was streaming earlier today. I walked into the kitchen to make coffee and I swear the heavens opened and it just poured. I was like, oh, well. Just matching the mood. I'm having tech issues today and everything, so it's great. But Jess, it's so good to be recording with you again. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be recording with you as well. I feel like I've finally been doing like a lot of these episodes. I feel like, you know, I kind of had this like absence as I like started my new job and I, you know, the other three of you kind of took over hosting duties. Now I'm back and it's just been one after another, which is awesome because I've gotten to meet so many awesome people, so many awesome guests. Such as our guest today, Joelle Monique. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm a little jealous because it's not raining here in LA. I love the rain. Every time it rains, it's like a small holiday.
That's fun. You're living in the wrong place if you love the rain.
Yep.
I hate the snow. So like it balances out a little.
Ireland's pretty great. We rain all the time. We never get sunshine though, so that's kind of like the trade-off that you have to be okay with.
I just write and read books all the time. It sounds magical.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice life. Well, Joelle, I know you do a ton of awesome things. You work for iHeart and you've done so much other stuff as well for BBC, Playboy. Definitely going to ask you some stuff about that. But if you had to kind of introduce yourself, or if you were, you know, giving an elevator pitch, or what would you want our guests to know about you?
Oh my goodness. I am a nerd who found her way into all avenues of work via fandom. I feel like that's the cornerstone of my work is all things Marvel. I'm a huge Batman stan. I love the Star Wars and the Trek. I don't get down with 24, but I could have, Lost, but I could have conversations about Lost, less conversations about 24. Writer, producer, host. Ta-da!
That's awesome. A wide range though. It's awesome.
Yeah, it keeps you busy.
So I guess I would really like to know, you're currently the executive producer at iHeart. You've also provided your own, you were talking about being a nerd, you provided your own expertise on, let me see if I get this right, Nerdificent? Is that how you would say that?
Yeah, it's a producer for Nerdificent with Danny Fernandez and Iffy Lightway. Yeah.
And now you have your own show as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's called Comic-Con Metapod. It is a convention, a pop culture convention for your ears every single week. It's hosted by myself and my good friend Hector Navarro, who is king of nerds. That guy literally has a DVD and comic book library that you can loan books out to friends.
That's cool.
It's the coolest thing ever. I really love Hector. We once tried to watch like a huge block of the first arc of Marvel movies together, and the whole time he was just behind the scenes commentary, and that was the moment I was like, listen, that I have to work with him. And that's been the goal for the past 4 years. And so when this opportunity came up, LA Comic-Con and iHeart teamed up. They knew they wanted to do a podcast. I had previously pitched a convention style podcast, so they put me in charge of it. And I got really lucky to let me work with Hector. And so it's so much fun. We've had really great guests like Giancarlo Esposito came on and cried with us about how much he loves like fan interactions and how important they are to him as a creator. He also talks about manifesting, which if you're into manifesting, hearing somebody who's made it that far, who really believes in like doing the work of like positive energy and networking and building in a way that's, you know, more spiritually leaning, it's really cool. I loved that conversation. We have Christy Carlson Romano and Will Friedle.
Oh yeah, from Boy Meets World.
Yes, from Boy Meets World, which was crazy.
Cool.
We only talked about it for maybe 4 minutes. I didn't get into the meaning of it all because I was not allowed to go full fangirl. We did talk a lot about Star Wars and like they love conventions. They have a new podcast. We talked about that. We had Donald Faison on and Seth Green where they were supposed to do a debate, like a fan debate, but they like each other so much they couldn't debate each other. And so they just started like give each other answers now. It's so cute and very, very funny. And that's kind of, the angle of the show. It's like, let's have some fun, people in. If you're a comic book nerd, we also actually go to conventions and record with artists and writers and these very in-depth sort of looks at their careers. And that's a lot of fun. So, sometimes if you miss a convention, you might actually hear it on the show. And we're really trying to bring in those local conventions that have like a really good like community around them, but maybe are smaller and less known, and give some access and some shine to those guys. So that's Comic-Con Metapod in a nutshell.
That's really cool. Thank you for giving us an intro to it. That's really awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm so excited about it. I just want more people to listen to it and give us feedback. Like I said, I'm a person who loves the fandom side of things. So when we get fans coming in, we did a segment with Will and Christy where we asked people for their children's drawings, and we had Will and Christy give voice to the characters, so that when the episode comes out, the kids can like look at their drawing and actually have a voice by professional voice actors. So I really loved that segment. I actually stole it from Will and Christy's show. I'm stealing this from you guys. They're like, do it. It's flattery. I was like, perfect.
That's awesome. In gaming, we talk about like the boss level being, the kind of milestone moment or like the challenge that you've hit and you've overcome. So what would you say boss level means to you and your career? Like, have you had like that milestone moment? Have you had a few milestone moments?
Man, yeah, so many. I feel like I'm constantly counting. I'm in a lot of therapy, so we're kind of always looking back and going over what happened and how did we get here. I think a major one for me was I crashed my car when I was working 19-hour days as a PA.
Oh, wow.
I fell asleep behind the wheel. It was very scary. I could have hurt someone. That was frightening. Nobody was hurt, thank God. Could have hurt myself. But I had been like working so hard for this dream, since I was real little. I wanted to be in entertainment. At first I thought I was an actress, and then I had an acting coach who was like, I really think you're a director. And from directing, I went to writing, and then I was producing, and I loved all sides of it. And I found all of it a lot of fun. But the only way I knew how to get in without a direct line of connections, and asterisk that, I'll talk about the other thing in a second, was to be a PA. And so I got hired to PA, and I ran into a lot of racism, a lot of sexism, a ton of ableism. It just wasn't working. And I was burning myself into the ground, and I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't figure out not only why was I exerting all this energy, but also, why couldn't I get ahead? I know I directed movies, I've gone to Cannes Film Festival and presented there. Why am I still stuck here as a PA in my mid-20s with a degree? It was just very confusing to me. So I pivoted out of that. I was able to find some connections to do the other route, which is be an assistant. I have ADD. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 30. Terrible assistant. God awful assistant. Like, can't keep track of your phone calls, don't know where things are, like bad. And so I was like, I'm never going to get in because I don't have enough money to be producing my own things. I don't have enough money to, to sponsor a career or to try to do something like, maybe I'll work part-time and supplement. ADD caused me to be a very terrible driver, couldn't do that for like everything was falling apart. And I felt a little bit crazy. And I wasn't sure what had happened between like junior year high school, where I was a very good student and focused, to this point in my career where I, was pushing 8 or 9 years of working in the industry with almost nothing to show for it. And then I met somewhere in between all of that chaos, I met a girl, her name's Tiana Hobbs, amazing producer, well-connected LA person. I think her uncle was like an LA Laker or something. Like, she's one of those LA girls where you're like, oh, okay, you know everybody because you've been here your whole life. And she introduced me to a network called AfterBuzz TV, which I think would be probably the next big milestone. And AfterBuzz is a YouTube channel that would review television and films and eventually comic books and all kinds of things. But the cool thing about it was they had a studio where you would watch a show, talk amongst a panel of like 4 people, and then immediately go into record with a live audience right after. So again, fandom is totally up my alley. I was like, we can geek out about, I don't know, Riverdale together or Gotham when that was on. These TV shows that had, Riverdale had a huge audience when it premiered, but some of the shows I did, small audience, but dedicated audience. So you're in a chat room broadcasting live to YouTube. I would do 3 to 5 shows a night, sometimes 5 nights a week. I was dedicated because it was the most fun I was having. And I could feel myself building up a skill. So there was like a lot of reward in that. And that's how I got into podcasting. I just was sort of there. From there, I became a researcher and a critic. I was reviewing so much and people found out I could write and they were able to come great for us. And that's went off into the Hollywood Reporter and Playboy and a bunch of other places. And that's sort of how I landed up here at iHeart. So I think those were probably the main thing. All failures, I would say, are all of my milestones are marked by like extreme failure that I then had to like kill a part of myself and be reborn and come back and try to be better.
I feel like I connect with that so much. And like, I really just want to thank you for your like refreshing sort of explanation of your journey, because I have had many like failures in my career, in my life, and they've all led me to bigger and better things that, at the time I didn't know were coming. But I just feel like there's such this culture of like, you have to tell everyone only the good stuff. You have to be happy all the time. If you have a failure, you got to spin it in a way where it's, and I just, it's so refreshing to hear you like openly, honestly talk about like, your struggles or your failures before something that was better for you came along. Cause that's happened to me numerous times throughout my career. Now I'm in a very good place, but life, like everything, is cyclical. But it's so interesting to see you like, have this wonderful career at iHeart. And also one thing I want to ask about is, what is it like now to have us like interviewing you when it feels like you're probably on the other side of things? Typically, you're producing the podcast, you're the one hosting and interviewing. Now here you are and a guest. What does that feel like?
It's interesting. I feel like, I don't know, it's strange. I do a lot of panels, and a lot of times panels were like, how do I do hosting? And so on that side of things, I couldn't possibly be interviewed with like by fans who were like, how do I do this YouTube thing? Or how did you get people to take your writing seriously or whatever? But then this sort of feels just like podcasting. It's nice. I really like being asked my opinion. I have lots of thoughts and no problem sharing them. Very little filter. so it's a good time. Yeah. And just to touch on the failure thing really quick, I would just say I used to really let it beat me up, a failure. Like I would feel like, oh, now I have to stop. I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone's better. I'm not going to get any better. Like failure used to be a huge like controller of my life. And to your point, it's a requirement. And I feel like if we don't treat it like one, then we can't navigate it well, because you're constantly trying to avoid failure. I think a lot of times people don't try, or they're trying safely, which doesn't usually net big rewards. You should embrace your failures, listeners. If you're not there yet in your journey, embrace them in a huge way, because honestly, it's just learning, and learning is just a series of failures until you know what you're doing. So yeah, I try now. It's an evolutionary process, but I try to really embrace them when they come.
It's really hard. I feel like some of the times in my career where I've been the most comfortable and the happiest have been when I've been in an environment where I feel like failure is treated as, like you say, like a learning opportunity.
Yes.
You're encouraged to fail. You're encouraged to make mistakes, as long as they're mistakes that you can learn from and iterate on. That's a good thing, and it's super, super healthy. And that's been some of my favorite experiences, have been like being in an environment where that kind of thing is encouraged. Because I think sometimes you can be in an environment where you're scared to fail, but especially if you're in a position, like we talk a lot about like content creation and stuff. If you're in a position where you're kind of like your own boss, allow yourself to fail a little bit now and again, because you need to take that risk to be able to know what's going to work and what isn't, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's really, really
it's going to happen anyway. Like the thing is, you can't avoid it. It's there's no way around it. You will fail. Like you have to come to terms with it and figure out how to just live in that. In the same way that you have to sort of live and come to terms with like, not everyone's going to like you or like what you do. Someone the other day told me my voice was unpleasant when I get excited. I will be honest, it destroyed me a lot. I was like, what does that mean? I can't. I've been told my whole life I have to slow down when I talk because people don't understand me. Now that's a note I can take. I'm very okay. I was an actor for 12 years. I'm totally fine with like criticism. I don't always take it with a smile on my face, but I will listen. I can't change how my voice comes out of my body. I could do some pitch exercises and maybe lower it a little bit, but that feels like sexism. And if you don't like my voice, that's a you problem, not a me problem. And so to bring it to my doorstep, particularly from someone I trusted, it was wild. It was a very movie kind of thing. But all that to say, like, I think as much as it still is a struggle to just accept that these things are going to happen, that you're a failure, that people aren't going to like you, you know, hopefully you can look back and mark and go, I handled that much better than I would have, which is where I got to at the end of that journey. Like, there was a time I would have been like 7 days down, 7 days questioning if this should be my career. I would have taken it seriously for so long instead of the 2 or 3 hours that afternoon, and then doing my self-care routine and getting back on my feet and getting back to work. Like, so yeah, small improvements. Failures will happen. It'll be okay.
It's funny you mentioned the voice thing, because one of the most bizarre criticisms, but it was really just kind of an insult that I ever received, was someone said that when I'm talking, I sound like I'm talking with a mouthful of peanut butter. And I have no idea what that means, but
that
I'd
sounds
like
like
to have
an
a
acting
mouthful
coach
of
that's
butter.
never had any success. That's what that sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Someone who's like, your diction doesn't come out trippingly on the tongue. The bard wouldn't like it, and I don't like it either. Get out of here. That's ridiculous.
It was such a random thing. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do with that information? Like, that's just the way my voice sounds.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do with that.
And that's the tough thing though, about doing any sort of like, I mean, that's the tough thing about the internet these days, is it's like, there's so much noise out there. And like, kind of, Joelle, like you were saying, you know, like, it's technically some feedback you could do something about. Like, if it's like, maybe I could go to voice coaching and pitch my voice out. Like, yeah, I know you're not going to or whatever, but it's like, okay, technically maybe I could, versus there's other stuff that it's like, what am I supposed to do about that? And how do you separate like what could actually be valuable feedback versus someone who just doesn't like you? And if they don't like you, like, that's not really your business to change their mind. You're not, that's not your job. You shouldn't have to do that. But again, it's like, there, you know, how do you know what's valid feedback versus what isn't? It all gets so, you know, you run the risk of like, what I used to do is like, I would just anytime there was any sort of feedback, I just didn't like it. I just didn't like hearing it, you know? So I just wouldn't listen to anything, even if it was valid feedback. I in my mind would like conflate it with all of this other like stupid criticism that I would get that like, I can't do anything about, you know?
You got to protect yourself. And that's the first defense mechanism, is like, got a lot of bad, very mean, cruel, not advice, things, you know, cast in the light of advice that were really just insults.
Yeah.
I don't like your voice. Okay.
Yeah. That's not.
And I think you have to take it from two viewpoints, right? So the first is, who's giving us advice? Is this a person worthy of my trust? You know, is this somebody who's invested a lot of time in my career or in, you know, this thing that I'm talking about? Do they have the knowledge to be giving me advice in the first place? Now, that doesn't mean you're only looking to experts. A friend might know you really well. Someone may watch a lot of what you're doing and have value, but just consider, who is this person? And then the second thing is, does this advice apply to me? I don't think there's like a great success story. You know, we as a human race, or at least I'll say in Western culture, from what I'm familiar with, we love a first. We love a groundbreaker. We're like, how did they do that? They were the first one. No one's done before them. And if you look at any of those guys' stories, inevitably someone will say, you're crazy. Either you can't do it. It's impossible. Give up. Like, it's a very key point in the biographic films of these people every single time. So I think you have to stop and consider, okay, this just might not be advice for me. Maybe that is the quote correct thing to do, but it's not my journey. And my journey might lead me somewhere completely new and amazing. I might be the first. You don't know. I'm trying a thing that works for me. I would also say, if it's a piece of advice you're unsure about, you can always try it. You know, in writing, when you get notes, I would say, just try the note. See how it feels. Does that not work for the character or for you? Do you not like it? Okay, throw it out. You don't have to take every piece of advice you're given. But those two things, I think, will save you a lot of heartache. If you're like, this person shouldn't be talking to me in the first place, or this advice doesn't suit me, you can move around it pretty quickly.
I once heard a very wise quote, never take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from.
Oh,
and
yes.
I thought like, oh, that's really good. And I think for a while just now, I was kind of conflating the terms advice and criticism, but like, I think that's so great, because there are certain people who I would actively go to for advice on like certain parts of my life. And it's like, if one of them had like criticism for me, then I would know it meant like it was coming from the right place and it would be something I would actually want to listen to, versus like some troll on the internet is someone, or like someone who I've never met. Well, I wouldn't go to that person for advice. Maybe they're a great person, maybe they're not, but I don't know them. I'm not going to them for advice. So also, why would I listen to their criticism?
That's completely fair.
I love that.
Well, yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to drop that very poignant quote, and then I think it's going to be time for us to take a little break. So we will be right back with more Boss Level. I guess I'll go ahead and bring us back in. Welcome back to the Boss Level. I'm Jess Brohard and joined by Psyche, and our guest today is Joelle Monique. We were just talking about some career advice, or not really career advice. We're kind of talking about how to take advice, but I guess let's flip it around. Joelle, do you have any advice that you would like to pass on to listeners for maybe not necessarily like anything to do with your career? Again, I know you've done so many different things, and that's one thing that I always really enjoy seeing. A lot of our guests do a ton of different, like I've worn a lot of different hats in my career. Most of our guests do. And I think that brings forth like a really wide array of knowledge, because then instead of necessarily, not that it's a bad thing to like specialize in any one area, but especially these days, I feel like it's so valuable to have like such a wide array of things that you can do and things that you have done. So with all this experience do you have any advice for our listeners?
I do. I sit on iHeart's union board. And I recently did a call for them with a bunch of other aspiring writers. We're talking about what does it mean to be part of the union? What are things you can expect as a writer? How can you support it, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that kept coming up was people were like, how do I get to there? Like, that guy's making X amount of dollars. I want to be there. How do I get an agent? Okay. I was in this industry for 12 years before I got an agent. And it was literally, my friend was just like, hey, do you want my agent to be your agent? And I was like, your agent's pretty good. She's like, yes. That was the secret. There was no secret other than someone knew me, had a little bit of knowledge of my work, and made a direct recommendation. I have tried writing letters, improving scripts, like everything you can think of, and I could not get noticed. And one of the things I think I learned most importantly on my journey is like looking up is detrimental to your climb. You want to look to your left and your right. Who's at your same level? What are they doing? And how can you work with them? Or how can you improve upon what they're doing? Or how can you guys help like promote each other's shows? Or, do they have a script and you're a director? Maybe they have a ton of beauty products you've never tried, or you guys are both makeup influencers. Do you want to like switch? Do you guys want to do a video where you're talking about the pros and cons? Like, working with the people at your level is, to me, the fastest way to exceed, because you're all meeting different people. You're all at about the same skill level. Most likely you're in about the same financial situation. So they understand where you're coming from and how you're going to be working. And as they're getting success, the first person they're going to think of is someone they've already worked with, someone they can trust, someone who knows how they work. It has been the godsend of my life to have a large peer group of professionals that I can trust, that I call friends, that are also coworkers. That has been, and coworkers I work with daily, and coworkers in that we're the same field, and I can go to them and say, girl, I don't know how to do this thing. It doesn't make sense. Or, I wasn't raised to work in corporate America. I was trained as a kid, like, this is how you answer phones. This is how you do a job interview. But corporate America cares about almost none of that. It's crazy. They tell you that it's important on your way up, but once you're in, what they really want to do is like, how do you order like a fancy lunch? How do you negotiate this contract? And what do these big legalese words mean? How much should you be asking for? I was listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about getting paid to perform in their first television show. They're like, we'll pay you $5,000 an episode. And I was like, that's amazing. $5K, that's $20,000. I've never made that much money in my life. And friends had to come and be like, bro, that's a ripoff, and you have to go back and ask for more. Don't ever work for that little. There's all these things that you don't know until you're confronted with them. Having a group of people who are at about the same level, invested, doing the same thing, can help you out immensely. If you find yourself in a position to be under, the gods or kings and queens of your industry and you're learning from them, that's really beautiful. And you should definitely take notes and do your best to be noticed and be successful there, but really take care of your peers. Really look to your left and right. And I promise you'll get further and further in your career.
I really value the idea of like looking up can actually negatively impact your climb. I like that idea because that is so important. And it's something that can be applied to so many different industries. It can be applied in content creation. Again, something that I'm obviously like deeply embedded in right now. It can be really, really hard because you look at people who are, perceived as being above you and not necessarily looking at the people who are at the same kind of stage as you. And there are so many people that are around the same kind of stage you are in their journey and in their growth that you could learn from and that you could make connections with, and that those things are really super valuable. And I think a lot of the time people maybe lose sight of that because, like you say, they're looking up rather than looking to their left and right. And that's really, really important.
Yeah, I would say, especially for somebody who has a neurodivergent condition, like anytime I got in front of folks, it was hard for them to take me seriously because I wasn't a professional level assistant. I wasn't a professional level PA. And so the assumption is you can't move past that. So now that I'm in a position of power, I work really hard to bring in diverse peoples, whether that's, from a disabled or LGBTQIA or racially diverse, who mostly don't have these skills already, as a way of sort of, I guess it feels a little bit like justice for younger me, to be like, these people are very serious and they care and they're hard workers, but they're going to need extra guidance up front so that they can catch up to the lessons that, some people have had the fortune of growing up with. It's a lot more work, for me as a boss, for them as individuals trying to bridge that gap, because you are still now in a professional capacity and you do have to, you do have to know these things. But when you have people who, as we were speaking about earlier, have some grace for you, can be patient with you, can see you through the difficult times, it makes for a world of difference. I think it's the thing that makes me love my current job is, I have a boss who, if I'm having an issue, I go to him with anything at all. And he's not afraid of any kind of emotion or issue, whatever it is, there's going to be a way to resolve it and keep pushing forward. And I think that's sort of my ideal work situation. Is like, oh, there's a problem. Okay, how do we fix it? We got it fixed? Great. Go out and be great. Do great things. That's sort of very loose and easy. We're not going to yell or get too upset. We're not going to blame or point fingers. It's my least favorite thing in the world. But, oh, well, if you had gotten it to me 2 days earlier, what does that matter? We can't go back and fix it. We can only move forward and try to make adjustments. And hopefully it doesn't happen again. But I think, a lot of my jobs before this one were, I was working under a lot of perfectionists or people who had an ideal of perfection or who wanted, and maybe rightly so, sometimes wanted very like highly organized brain, high functioning folks, which I was not. So yeah, I think what's been most helpful to me is like accepting I'm not that person, and then trying to make avenues for people who are also like that. So hopefully our industry can become more inclusive in that way.
So one of the things that you did while working at Black Girl Nerds was shining a light on positive improvements within like the TV and film industry. Why was that important to you, and how did you do that? Can you talk a little bit about all of that?
Oh man. Yeah. BTM is such a wild trip. That's a job I got off of Twitter where they were like, can you write? And I was like, yes. And they're like, great, here's assignments, go. And that wound up taking me to like London to cover the premiere of Justice League. It took me to South by Southwest, where I went on my first, like my second solo trip ever, but my first, intercontinental down to Texas trip where I got my first set too. Like that job just opened so many doors. And while I was there, I was heavy on Twitter. We were in the Trump era, like approaching, and then in it, we were dealing a lot especially as a Black culture, of being seen for the first time in different spaces, particularly on film and television. And we were seeing the rise of people like Barry Jenkins and Ava DuVernay to, from festival circuits to the main eye. And I think that's sort of what I was clinging to, because Ava DuVernay was the thing that got me to move to LA. She has this great speech that she gave at Film Independent called the Code of Desperation speech. If I ever feel bad for myself, I play that speech and I get over that shit real quick. And basically her whole speech was just, if you're desperate, nobody wants you, which is an unfortunate thing to hear. And it felt really mean the first time I heard it. I was like, that is so cruel and thoughtless. Like, if you're desperate, like, you know, how are you supposed to do anything? Like, it's so frustrating. You don't know. You're not broke. It wasn't my initial thought line. But then it became, you know, well, what are you going to do about it? You know, people can only help you so much. And I think a lot of times it's going to people who I felt had already made it. And I was like, give me the secrets so I can skip this horrible phase. But the horrible phase was, you have to learn your skills and you have to learn what you're good at. You have to learn what you're not good at. And so being sort of obsessed with Ava in that way and watching her career blossom, you know, she is a very talented writer director, but then she went on to produce Array, which is a distribution film company, and they go to film festivals and they pick up unique Black cinema that most people aren't looking at, and then they made a deal with Netflix, and now it's broadcast across the globe. Work like that is so freaking inspiring. Like, she is finding the next generation of Black great filmmakers and not asking anyone permission. She's not asking people to look. She's putting it out there so people can have access to it. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to highlight Black creatives that were doing great things already. I think so much of, like, at least when I was coming up, if you were Black, they were like, oh, well, do you know how to fill out a resume? But yes, bitch, get out of here. What are you talking about? I have the skills. I have the access. Access is what we need, not skills training, not the, like, those things are great. And I think they should stay in place. And I don't have a problem with programs like that because some people do need access to them. But there's a large community of people who literally just need access. They have all your basic skills. They need to learn some of the advanced skills and they need to get in the door to try these things out. And so I wanted to highlight people that were doing that, or that had the opportunities and were telling great stories. And I wanted to connect people to the stories that they might love. You know, I really, really love, you know, putting the right book in the right person's hand at the right time. That, oh gosh, if there's a better rush than that, I don't think so. There are lessons in here and it will feel like it's written directly for you. Please check it out. That's the best for me. And so, yeah, that was sort of my time at TGN.
So while we're talking about your past experiences, I have to ask about writing for Playboy. Yes. Like I said, I just think, like, can you talk about what kind of content you wrote for them and what that whole experience was like writing for them? I'm just so fascinated. I just personally, I'm really interested in the whole, like I watched, you know, the, what was that show with Hugh Hefner and his girlfriends, the Bunny Next Door or whatever? Yeah. The house. No, that's the movie. It was like it was the Something Next Door, right? It was like the, but I don't know. I was just so fascinated I'm just fascinated by all of that. So please tell me about Playboy.
So my time at Playboy was short of freelance. So I was working for like Playboy and Variety and the AV Club and the Hollywood Reporter all at the same time. I came in when they relaunched. So they stopped printing the magazines and they took nudes out. And then it died because why is there a Playboy, not those things? Then they hired an entire group of like young millennials to be the head editors, which was really fascinating to me. As like, I was in my late 20s. They were all mostly in their early 30s, but somewhere in their early 20s. I was like, this is so many young people. It's weird to especially coming off of like the Hollywood Reporter, which is like legendary icon writers and editors who've been in the field for 40 years. Switch over there, it was very bizarre. And they were having me do interviews. So my favorite one was Keke Palmer. They have a 50 questions thing they do where it's sort of like, is it Variety or I can't remember which magazine does the 100 questions through so-and-so's home or whatever. But it was sort of that vibe. So I got to meet Keke Palmer at a hotel when she was doing promotion for Hustlers. And we sat down and I watched her do the photo shoot, which was a surreal moment for me as a girl who came up watching a lot of like model TV shows, just hot girls doing photo shoots. And I was like, that's such a glamorous life. And then there's Keke like getting in and out of these very wild costumes, getting her photo taken in the Beverly Hills Hilton. So it was very swanky. It was cool. We chatted on the couch for a minute and I wrote out these questions that were kind of silly. I discovered she had like 84 tattoos. It was a lot of fun. I also interviewed William Jackson Harper. I'm pretty sure that was for Playboy, who was Chidi in The Good Place. Let's watch that. If you watch Love on
I love
HBO, oh, he is so talented.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a fun interview. So mostly I was doing like celebrity interviews for Playboy, and it was fun because there are less rules there. They still want like, you know, proper structure and the integrity of the actual writing, but you know, if you want to talk about ass play, go for it. It's Playboy. That was sort of the vibe. It was a lot more open.
I was gonna say, I was expecting a lot of those like really juicy answers because like it's Playboy, and like granted, I've never like read an article in like a Playboy magazine, so like I didn't know like what kind of content they were putting out. But
the stereotype is that it tends to be like either dry or high, like intellect. What am I thinking of? Like theory, sort of speaking. You know, like
how funny.
Well-educated opinion makers and influencers, and like I think parts of On the Road were published in Playboy back in the day, like. That's sort of the right. And then alongside all of that, there's because it's supposed to be a gentleman's magazine. So gentlemen want to see tits and they want to think, I guess.
Yes,
I don't know. That's the vibe. I would absolutely write for them again. I tried to get them to do, I kept pitching, oh man, I can't remember this woman's name now, where she was a trans actress who first appeared in Ava DuVernay's Netflix series, When They See Us. And she does such a phenomenal job. She hadn't done much acting before. She's had a couple of big roles since then. But I met her at a party and I thought she was just fabulous. And I was like, you know, now they're like all young and trendy. They should do like a whole trans thing. And so I pitched it, and then they got busy because this sort of blew up after I first got with them. But I might circle back to that and be like, you know, there's a ton of like amazing trans people out here doing great work. Maybe you highlight them in your pages. So we'll see. I don't know. I really like my time there though. It's a good time.
That's really
Storm Reed, our producer Dan is asking. Storm Reed, is that? I think he's asking. Is that the actress that we're talking about?
Yeah. Storm was great. She's fun. I always saw her with her agent at random events, and I would be like, "You guys, feel like it's gonna happen?" Like, I'm trying. I really want you there. I think it'd be great.
That's really cool. I don't know. I guess sort of Playboy to me has always been kind of a little bit of a mystery. So it's really kind of fun to.
Do they not have it in Ireland? Like do they not circulate the magazine there?
It does exist, but I feel like it's kind of not something like I have to ask. In the US, can you just like walk into a shop and buy a Playboy?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you have to be 18.
Printed them.
So
no, they have them behind, like they put them in black bags, and then they put those behind like I don't know how to describe it, but it looks like a pan, but it's completely flat, like a cookie pan basically. And so you have to really discern. You're like, okay, this is Playboy. Okay. You pick it up and you can't flip through it. It's usually bagged.
Right. Okay. So we usually have like the more adult kind of oriented magazines are available in like a bookshop or like a anywhere we get a magazine, but they're like on the super high shelves because they think that like kids can't reach those, and there's no such thing as a short person. So like,
short adults deserve porn too.
Apparently, short adults just don't get anything.
Like you can get it, but you must ask, and it will be embarrassing.
So it does stepladder for you.
Yeah, how embarrassing. It does exist, but it's like something that I guess to me, I say this as a person, the first time I ever went to the States, I went to Las Vegas, and I went to, is it the Palm Hotel or
yes, it is.
The Playboy Hotel that has like the Playboy suite, and we had like it was a company trip, don't ask. There was a Playboy suite, and we had like I worked for a company who did like every year, because we had I worked in the games industry. It's not like anything else, but they had, every year, because they had offices around the entire globe, they would get everybody together in a central location, and they always picked casinos for some reason. So they picked Vegas for the first one that I was there for anyway, and it just happened to be that hotel. And I was like, I don't really understand why this is the Playboy Hotel. This is really weird. Everything looks like perfectly normal or whatever. And then at like 8 o'clock in the evening, I came downstairs from my hotel room, and all of the people who were working at like the blackjack tables and stuff had been replaced with Playboy bunnies. And I was like, oh, this was a man in a tux a minute ago. I know there's a lady in like a really fluffy kind of like, what's going on there? She's got bunny. Oh, this is cool. So that was kind of weird for me because again, like Playboy's a thing here, but it's not like a big thing, I think. So it's really fun to hear the kind of behind the scenes type thing. It's interesting.
That's funny because I didn't even really think about like what a very probably American like thing it is, but it's pretty pervasive in our culture. It's like there's like the classic like kid sneaking off to his dad's bedroom and finding his Playboy magazines. That's just like every kid has had that experience, or at least that's what the movies tell me.
When I was a child,
I found my dad's Playboys as a kid. I mean, I was fascinated by them.
As you would be. Yeah, I read them at my gay friend's house. It was fun. He was like, "Is that really what tits look like?" I was like, "I guess. I don't know. I am a child." The other thing is, when I was a kid, girls that would go to tanning beds would always get the Playboy bunny like on their hip.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a like 2006 memory I am having. I didn't even think about that, but holy crap, you're right. Like high school, college age girls would like, oh my God, that is so funny. I can't even like, because I didn't do the tanning thing in high school. And so
it was a big thing.
It was huge. Like every girl that was like, she would wear her low-rise jeans and her like Abercrombie polos stacked on top of each other, and then just a little hip would be showing, and there would be those bunny ears, and it was very, very popular. Yeah,
well, because I just now remembered like that's a cultural phenomenon I completely forgot about, and it's because like these like high school age girls couldn't get tattoos usually without the parents' permission, so instead they would wear like a Playboy sticker on their hip so it would tan in the logo.
That's really smart. I'd never thought of that. Did you actually, speaking of Playboy, did either of you see that apparently, hold on, I'm trying to find, the global head of creator and influencer marketing from Twitch actually just left and has started a job as the VP for creator and influencer marketing for Playboy.
Wow, that doesn't surprise me at all. And they're doing very exciting things over there.
And apparently, producer Dan has just linked us a little article saying that Playboy is the 21st most recognizable brand, like logo, I guess, in America.
I'm not surprised. I actually, in fairness, here's my, we didn't really talk about Playboy all that much in Ireland, but whenever I was a teenager, I remember many girls in my class having like their little kind of folders that had all of their like notes and stuff for school. They had like stickers of the Playboy logo, or like they had like the cutout on the front of the folder. So there was just like a kind of negative of it on the front of the folder. I remember that being a thing, even though it's not as big a thing here as it is in the States. That's so wild.
That bunny has power.
Yeah. Wow.
That's crazy. So I guess we've kind of ripped you about your entire history. So sorry. But I'm just sitting here like, oh wow, yeah, Playboy, interesting. Oh, let's talk more about that. That's cool. So earlier on, we did kind of dig into the fact that you've had such a I guess varied journey throughout your career. And you gave us some kind of like piece of advice that you had yourself, but what kinds of things, can you think of anything that's actually stood out to you that a mentor has given you as a piece of advice that has really stuck with you? Because I think that could be super valuable.
I've been fortunate enough to have 3 mentors. Sue Williamson's my theater teacher. I had Jack Smith when I got to college. And then I had Ron Falzone later, and those guys were instrumental in teaching me that my voice had purpose. Actually, all 3 of them. Sue, Ms. Williamson, I think she would slap me if she heard me call her Sue. Sue Williamson would spend summers teaching me how to speak and articulate. I really wanted to do theater, and she's like, but girl, you speak so quickly, no one can understand you. So we do diction classes all summer. I never missed a play audition after that. Always aced it. And then Ron and Jeffrey, I would debate in class. I'm like very much a nerd. Some people would say something that I was like, that's not accurate. We would really get into it in class, in film school. And we had this thing at school called Cinema Slapdown. And it was cool because all the students were encouraged to come. We'd watch a movie. Ron would be in literally a referee's uniform, and we would just debate. So you could stand up in the middle of an auditorium and just talk about how trash or good that movie was. You had a whistle, it got cantankerous at times. It was a lot of fun. I struggle to think of a single piece of advice. I would say all of my mentors pushed me to be more authentic. You know, I think I did a lot of hiding. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin for a long time. And I think most of their guidance was just toward sitting with myself and being like, do you like what's happening? And if so, why don't you do that more? Gosh, I wish I could remember. Sue Williamson was great at giving me speeches. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's a good one. So in senior year, I come up through theater with these huge class of theater nerds. Now, usually freshman year, there's a handful and then it dribbles off. And then maybe there's 4 or 5 kids up at the end. But my crew had like 12 of us and we did it the whole time. And a lot of them were friends who went to the same church. I wanted to go in there my like sophomore year of high school, just like hang out with these kids. We were tight. But we were also teens and, you know, had our tiffs or whatever. Someone's car got egged and she was really hurt by it. It happened at a cast party. It was awful, just from an emotional standpoint. Like everybody's fine, it's a car, but it was awful. And that like her feelings really hurt, and then people felt like assholes, and then who didn't and who didn't, and of course that starts to reveal, and it got messy as typical teen drama does. And so Sue brought us into, again, I'm so sorry, Ms. Williamson, if you're hearing this. Ms. Williamson brought us into the auditorium, just the seniors, and she sat us all down. And she gave us this amazing speech, which I cannot recall verbatim, but the gist of it was basically in every single seat, there has sat a person who was impacted by something on the stage. And every stage has been filled with kids like you who've been impacted by the work they've done here in this space. This is hallowed ground. And when you enter a theater, you are responsible not just for your audience and their enjoyment, but for your crew and your cast and their experience here. And when you break that trust, you break the sacred ground that is the theater. And why would you want to do that in such an important home and space for so many people? And that really brought home a sense of responsibility to any setting that I work in. You know, I think about that moment a lot. It sort of shocks you when the teacher that you pal around with all the time gets very serious and it's like, you've done wrong and I got to correct you before you try to do wrong again. And I've always sort of viewed theaters, really any theater, I mean, a movie theater, a theatrical space type of theater, a dance hall, whatever, as hallowed ground because it's a place where people go to heal and express themselves and escape. And so, yeah, I think Sue Williamson's conversations on respecting the space and respecting your peers that's the best advice I maybe have ever gotten.
That's really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So should we go ahead and wrap things up and do some social media plugs and everything? Psyche, do you want to lead the way?
Absolutely, sure. So super quick, I was at Advertising Week Europe last week, and I don't know if the panel that I was on is going to be available on demand. I believe it is, but I'm not 100% sure. But if it is, it was pretty exciting. I was talking with POC, disabled and queer content creators, and we were talking about how brands can create a more inclusive and diverse experience, which was a really, really good conversation, and it was a super empowering one for me to be a part of as a queer content creator. So that was really exciting. And my schedule is finally back to normal. So I will be on Twitch 4 days a week at twitch.tv/Psyche and on socials as Psyche Plays.
Wonderful. Thank you, Psyche. I'm Jess Brohard. I don't really have anything that I want to plug this week, so I'll just kind of plug my social media on Twitter and Instagram. I'm just at Jess Brohard, my name, if you want to follow me there. And then finally, our wonderful guest this week, Joelle, can you please tell our audience what is your social media? Where can they find you? And is there anything you're excited about lately that you want to plug?
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a very lovely conversation. Guys, I'm Joelle Monique. You can find me all over the internet at Joelle Monique. It's JoelleMonique. Please check out Comic-Con Metapod if you love interviews, if you love fan theory. Hector and I go as deep as our knowledge will allow, and we're excited to bring in some more folks. I don't know if you guys know Rosie Knight. I think she's going to come on and talk some fun Marvel Thor stuff with us later. It is absolutely a passion project, and I'm so proud of it. And I just want more people to listen so that we can talk more about it, to be honest. Please come nerd out with me on my socials, even if you don't listen to the show. I just want to talk nerdy things with people all day long. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
I will definitely be checking out Comic-Con
Me too.
Metapod, because I am a huge fan of some of the guests that you mentioned. So I can't wait to listen to that.
I'm just a huge nerd, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah,
by
same.
anything
And then, of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on social media at The Boss Level Pod. That's spelled Boss LVL Pod. And join our Discord for a behind-the-scenes look at this show. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to check out our brand new YouTube channel as well, where you can see some snippets from past episodes. And if you really have this kindness in your heart, we're going to ask that you please rate and review on iTunes. It's a great way for the podcast to get discovered by a new audience. Really, really helps us out. If you enjoyed it, please rate and review on iTunes or whatever other podcast platform you're listening on. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.